All right, and I have the first question. And this is a question for Josiah from a local physics teacher. How efficient is your process versus simple water electrolysis? And does it produce any toxic byproducts?
So the efficiency of a system sort of is determined by where you start and end. So aluminum is made via the Hall-Héroult process from aluminum oxide. I won't go into details on the chemistry, but it's on Google if you want to know more. So aluminum oxide is actually the byproduct of our system, the only byproduct of our system. That aluminum oxide, if you put it back through the Hall-Héroult process and turn it back into aluminum, that whole end-to-end process that makes it 100% recoverable and renewable is right around 72% efficiency. Electrolyzers, depending on how you measure the efficiency of an electrolyzer, they hover around between 68 and 80. And steam methane reformation is the current leading method where 95% of hydrogen in the world is produced. It's about 65%. Oh, and definitely no toxic byproducts. I could have drank that, but please don't make me. Good?
Yep. Cool. Make sure you all are tweeting some questions on Twitter. We've got the hashtag IFBG19. Does anybody in the audience have any questions I'd like to ask?
What would you say is like the first step for people our age for entrepreneurship?
First step's a dream, obviously. After that, it's just creating a plan. That's the biggest thing. I mean, the biggest thing about entrepreneurship is there's so much unknown about it. That's why it's so fascinating and captivating to so many people. And that's why entrepreneurs are so successful or so significant when they're successful because of how unique it is. As far as the first step goes, figuring out what you need in order to get started. So for instance, when we started, I wanted to create a business. I had to do research on getting a business license and being legally established to make sure I wasn't breaking any rules. And also getting involved with mentors, talking to older people. Don't ever be afraid to talk to people that are older than you because you don't want to feel vulnerable or that you don't want to feel like you don't know what you're talking about because they've been there, they've done it, they know what's going on, and more than likely they're willing to share some insight with you. Do you want to give some input?
Yeah, and even if you know, like, in the next 5 years or 10 years, I want to have my own business. It takes time, I think, to identify what's a real problem that you're going to find fascinating day in and day out, and that's so critical. I worked for a year after college in Washington, D.C. in sort of investor relations and research and realized like, hey, I don't want to work for someone else, but I also don't really know what I want to do. And when I moved to Nashville, my sister and I started a business that's different than the business I have today. And so I think don't be afraid to get started, but it's also not bad to go make mistakes on someone else's dime while you're figuring out what's the thing that the challenge that you really want to be focused on solving. Because it's an evolution to build any company, and probably the thing you think you might want to create in the beginning is probably different than what you'll sort of end up with.
I would say do stuff that you think is really cool. And what I mean by that is you can go play with a 3D printer or play with a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino. You can make a robot. You can make a race car. Do things that you think are cool, and ideas will come. And you'll be learning while you do it, and the things you are learning, I promise you, you will use every single day if you go on to start a company. So just do stuff that you like, and that will set you up as the strongest foundation, I think, to move over to entrepreneurship, because eventually you'll find a problem that needs solving, or you'll have an idea that solves a huge problem, and you'll be equipped to take that and execute on it.
Just to add one thing, it doesn't have to be a for-profit business. That's what might drive you. And when I was doing my first company with my sister on the side, I was helping some friends, and I decided to start a community farm, and we were selling at farmers markets, and we had a CSA. And so that was never going to be a super profitable business for any of us. It was barely a business at all. We just basically paid our bills and got food. But we learned so much about like hands-on running our own farm that later really has helped me sort of in running Stony Creek Colors. And so you just getting as many experiences as you can without necessarily thinking about how do I monetize each one. You'll know when you sort of have an investable or a proof of concept that's hopefully doesn't even need investment. You just go cash flow it right off the gate. But like you could get as many experiences as you can sort of prior to that don't get stagnated by like perfecting your idea. Just go out and do it and see if people actually want it, I think.
Okay, Twitter Elf is back. So question from Twitter, how do you each plan to expand your products globally? What does that take?
Since we don't really manufacture anything as far as our own products go, we're not really planning on expanding internationally right now. I think the only thing that would potentially go international would be the media side of things, the production side of what we're going to be doing. All the content we create, whether it's photography, videography, shows. But as far as our apparel, our own in-house products, that's probably just going to stay in the United States.
Yeah, so we already are selling internationally. We have some partnerships with mills in other countries, and so they buy our stuff. A lot of times there's been like a brand that has pulled it through a mill. Maybe someone at a retailer says, hey, I work with this mill in Turkey. Can you pitch them on using your dye? But we're very small still, so we have to just be pretty judicious about how many new customers we can take in the year and recognize that our like sales team is really just me right now, so we can't sell to like 100 mills all around the world yet. Unless I'm gonna like put my baby in my backpack because I have a cute little 1-year-old, so I don't like to be away for so long.
Okay, don't dismiss the baby in the backpack, though. That sounds like a great motivational tool.
Just buy the dye.
Yes. As far as what we're doing, over the next 2 years, like I said in my presentation, we're launching in the US and Canada. That's going to be our initial market. From there, Australia actually right now is one of the countries that's leading the charge on hydrogen. Who knew? So Australia is another key area for us, but over the next 10 years, we have a whole lot of cool deployments coming, and we're not sticking just to industrial hydrogen. It's not very glamorous, but it worked out really well for us in the market. But we're going to go into like fuel cells and cars and all sorts of cool stuff. But essentially for the next 5 or so years, it's going to be just an expansion of where the customers and where the governments are most willing to have us.
Okay, we've got one last question for this session. And again, this is from Twitter. I suspect at different points in time during the process, you get down. Things aren't going 100%. How do you keep yourselves motivated and focused moving forward with your product and your dream?
So I'll go first, I guess. That goes back to having a support system. It's extremely important, and I have started companies in the past that failed entirely because I didn't have a good support system. But you've got to be able to talk to people. My co-founder, I talk to him all the time. We're like best friends. Co-founders are like a marriage anyways. I've got my girlfriend and my dog that I bug the heck out of her. And I've got my dad that I talk with him every day, and he just walks me through, okay, I'm having this really horrible problem that in my head is insurmountable. And he'll be like, no, you're being stupid. Here's a simple path forward. So you just got to have a really good support system and just keep your eye on the prize and think, okay, every company in existence has probably had a problem of this scale. I can get past this.
Yeah, I would say, each individual needs to figure out for themselves, or hopefully figure it out for themselves, like kind of their unique coping strategies. But every business is if it's easy, then you're not doing something transformative. And I tell my team, like, hey, if this was easy, none of us would have jobs because this problem would have been solved a long time ago. And so I think that kind of from a big picture, that is, if you're jumping into entrepreneurship, just know that it is a very long haul, and you got to kind of optimize the highs when you're successful and minimize the risks and really the damage that's done when things are terrible. I think that from a personal level also, it's important to really learn how to deal with rejection. And I mean that to say, like, you might be so excited and compose like a huge email to a potential customer or reach out to someone, and it's like nothing. Literally, they don't even write back, or you thought through all these scenarios of why this would be the perfect collaboration, and they don't even care whatsoever. And I think that I just learned to like put as much out there as possible. When I was growing up, I hated even like talking on the phone to adults. My mom would make me like call to book a dentist appointment, and I was like, no, I hate to call any adult. And so just putting yourself in situations where you're like a little bit uncomfortable is the place that you're going to grow the most. And that doesn't always. You can work on those skills before you have a business. You can develop those through volunteering. You can develop them through jobs that you might have. And I think that, it's not like dealing with the downside of life and of entrepreneurship. It's really important to know that sometimes things that are challenges are also representing sort of this biggest opportunity that you have to grow to the next level as a person and potentially as a business leader also.
So yeah, I think this question is more of like a two-part question. You've got two sides to it. You've got the side that is the prevention side and the kind of preparing for when you go through a rut and then a down point. And the other side is how you deal with it. So a big tip that I was given early on, and just kind of how I was raised, is you got to be tough. I mean, that's just the reality of life. You just got to be tough. You can't take things personally. Something doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. Someone doesn't like your idea, too bad. You got to go back to the drawing board. You got to figure out how to come back from that stronger than you did before. And it might sound, kind of aggressive, but that's just the world in the sense of business. It's aggressive, it's a fight, you're struggling to become the best one in whatever your industry is. The second part is how you deal with it. For everybody, it's different. At the end of the day, you got to figure out what makes you happy. When you're sad, you want to find out, how can I get happy again? And to get happy, what makes you happy? For some people, it's listening to music. For some people, it's hanging out with your friends. For others, it's going for a long drive or traveling somewhere, and it just depends. So you have to figure out where you're at, understand what makes you happy, and then do it. For me personally, I really enjoy listening to music, all sorts of different types of music. And when I get in a rut, I'll just listen to music and work, step back, go drive cars, hang out with my friends. It's different things. But at the end of the day, you only have one life. You got to do what makes you happy. And when you get down, you got to find a way to get back up. And just sitting around and quitting is not an option.
Thank you all so much. You've been a wonderful audience this morning.